Hello, welcome to the webinar today when we're going to be looking at the issue of investments and staying safe with your investments or as you explore investments. Today we've got John Maron here from the North Carolina Secretary of State's office. He's got a really fancy title. It's the Director, I have to read it because it's quite long, the Director of Investor Protection and Education Services Program of the North Carolina Department of Secretary of State Securities Division. Right, it's a long one. And we're so happy you're here with us, John.
Well, thank you.
Before we get started into the content, let's just see how to use this site and how you can submit questions or comments. There you'll see an example of, well, you do see what the site looks like. And on the bottom right corner, there's a place where you can say, it says say something. So you could type in your question or comment there and then submit it. And then we'll see it and get back to you. So one of the things we have to clarify at the very beginning is we're in North Carolina. Both John and I are here. And oh, by the way, I'm Gretchen Batra of the mountain region of North Carolina in the western part of the state. And since the two of us are North Carolina and there are probably people checking in from other states, John, can you clarify what we do here in the Secretary of State and what some other states might do?
Yeah, certainly. Thank you, Gretchen. I appreciate the invite and be able to participate today. Welcome to all the viewers out there. As Gretchen said, I'm John Maron. I'm the Director of the Investor Education Program. Every state has a Secretary of State's office, but not every Secretary of State does the same kind of thing. In North Carolina, the Secretary of State's office has primary responsibility. Most people who know who deal with our office deal with us primarily as the business registration entity for the state. In other words, if you want to do business legally in the state, you have to register with the Secretary of State's office. I work in the Securities Division, and what we do is we regulate stockbrokers, investment advisors, and the investment products that they either sell or advise about. We are sort of the state equivalent of the Federal Securities and Exchange Commission. We have some other responsibilities. We are the trademark enforcer here in the state. We also are the regulator of charitable solicitors and charitable organizations. We do notary enforcement, and a couple other little things. But primarily, we have we are a law enforcement agency. We do have sworn agents who can issue subpoenas and do investigations and stuff. And we have a full range of attorneys that can actually help prosecute cases. So we're sort of a niche law enforcement agency with very specific, very narrow types of jurisdiction. Financial crimes, specific types of financial crimes is kind of our specialty.
Wow. So is that, and I just want to note that Gretchen did do a disappearing act, but she will be back. I'm just her understudy here. So tell us more specifically about investment fraud and that area of focus for you, John.
Yeah. Well, investment fraud is a very hard to detect kind of crime, because oftentimes people can be victimized and not know it, and it may be years or decades before they discover it. I will mention the name Bernie Madoff. Does that ring any bells with anybody? Bernie was probably one of the most notorious Ponzi schemers in American history. And he is right here in North Carolina right now. He's doing his federal penance outside of Durham and Butner, North Carolina. But basically, investment fraud involves people who are sort of pitching an investment product and trying to get people to buy into it. Now, what I want people to realize and understand is that the person who is promoting the investment, generally speaking, that person has to be registered in order to lawfully do that kind of work. And so they either have to be registered with the feds or they're registered with the state. I don't want people to get hung up as to who regulates who. It doesn't matter. Just know that these individuals have to be registered, generally speaking. And you can use our office, call our office to verify if the person is actually registered. That's the single best thing that anybody can do to minimize their chances of getting ripped off through a fraudulent investment. And I see that Gretchen has thrown up my email address and my phone number. Feel free to reach out to me. I'm not one of the investigators or the registrars or anything, but you can use me as a conduit. Probably the best way of reaching folks. I mean, if you just want to call and check and verify the registration status of somebody, is to use our toll-free number. I'm not sure if you have that, Gretchen, but I can read it. Mm-hmm. It's 800-688. 4507. That's 800-688-4507. There you go. You put it right there. Thank you. Boy, this technology is awesome.
That's because Rebecca is awesome. She's the tech guru here.
Okay, good. So just remember that the person who is promoting or advising about investing, they have to be registered with the Secretary of State's office. Not only must the person be registered, but the actual investment product itself has to be registered. So if people take nothing else away from my presentation or our discussion today, it's just the understanding that before you make the investment, before you give your money to anybody relating to some investment scheme, we want you to contact the Secretary of State's office to simply verify if the person is registered. That's the single best thing anybody can do to minimize their chances of getting frauded. Now, I have to caveat all of this by saying that mere registration in and of itself does not confer the good housekeeping seal of approval to an individual. I will again reference our good friend Bernie Madoff. Mr. Madoff, at the time of his arrest, was legally registered to do the business that he said he was doing. It's just that he was stealing people's money behind the scenes. So registration doesn't mean that the person is good or bad. It just means they've done what the law requires, and that is to register. But that being said, if you call our office and you find out that the person that you're dealing with is not registered, then that should be a red flag to do some additional digging and research and possibly find somebody else to help you manage your investments.
John, we've got a question already.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Right.
Let's see.
Right from the get-go.
I don't see the question.
Okay.
Any thoughts about Sid Hansen and his Ponzi scheme? Yeah, I got a lot of thoughts about Sid Hansen. He's doing time. So yes, that was one of the cases that we investigated, and we helped get some justice for victims. Probably not all that they were hoping for, but one of the things that is always a a challenge for agencies like ours, law enforcement agencies, is, people lose money and they want their money back. And oftentimes in a fraudulent investment scheme, there is no money to get back. It has been spent. There are times when a court will order restitution, and if there are any assets, any money left, then they will be apportioned out on some sort of formula that the court determines. But we did get Mr. Hansen, and as I said, he's doing some significant time. I forget exactly how much. I think he essentially got a life prison sentence. So regardless of the actual years, he got a life sentence effectively.
Okay. Well, let's go back up a little bit to when people register. Sometimes you see people that are claim to be investment advisors, and they have a whole slew of alphabets behind their names. Can you shed some light on who's who and so forth, and how is it legitimate or not legitimate?
Well, that's an excellent question and an excellent point. Very, very briefly, let me give you sort of a little bit of a background. There are lots of different people out there that do financial services in some form or other. Okay, you got your bankers, you got insurance agents, you got brokers, stockbrokers, you have investment advisors. Okay, and sometimes an individual can be one or more of those different types of professionals. Their responsibility to the customer, to the client, will vary, and it will depend on what hat they're wearing at what given time. So as Gretchen said, a lot of times people do have fancy titles. Sometimes they have lots of little letters after their names. Sometimes those letters mean something. Okay. For instance, we know what PhD means. We know what MD means, JD, CPA, things like that. But if I handed you a business card and it had my name and it had CHSG after it, what would that say to you? I don't know, but you're looking at this card and you see my name, you see all these letters, and you see CHSG. Man, he must know something. He's a CHSG. I don't know what it is, but it's impressive because here it is on my card. C probably stands for certified, but you don't know what the rest of it. Gretchen, you want to tell people what CHSG is?
Something about graduating from high school, or
certified high school graduate, CHSG. Yeah. So my point being, be careful of those little letters. Don't fall into a false sense of security that just because somebody has fancy letterhead or business card that has all these little, Gretchen told you my title at the front. I mean, yeah, okay, that's what I'm called. That's what I put on my business card. But we want you to be skeptical. We want don't just believe what the person is telling you. Do some independent verification. Use our office. There are only 5 professional designations that our state statutes exempt those holders, the people that have those designations, from having to take the registration exams to be licensed in the state. They still have to register, they just don't have to take the exams, because in order to get one of these designations, they have to pass a series of tests and continuing education and stuff like that. I'm not going to tell you what those letters are or what those designations are, because I don't want you to fall into the habit of just believing that because somebody has these letters that they are actually registered. I want you to be skeptical. I want you to call our office to verify that the people are actually what they say they are. Now, to get back to your point about all these different titles and designations and stuff and duties. As I said, there are different types of people who have different levels of responsibility to the client. An insurance agent is just that. That's all they do. They are able to sell insurance policies and various types of annuities and things like that. They can sell you whatever you're willing to buy, whatever type of insurance product they're licensed to sell. They can try to sell you. They don't have to put the client's interests ahead of theirs. They can try to sell you whatever you're willing to buy at whatever commission rate it's going to accrue to them. Okay, so they have no real responsibility to the client. Stockbrokers have a know the customer responsibility. They have to know who you are as an investor, what your risk tolerance is, and they can therefore only legally recommend to the client an investment product that meets the client's risk tolerance and what their objectives are. Now, if you come to them and say, maybe you are officially classified as kind of a conservative investor. You want to maintain your principal, maybe get a little bit of growth, but you're really wanting to protect your investment. But you go and you hear about cryptocurrencies and bitcoins and all these other high flying things, and you think, okay, I have a little bit of money. I want to invest in those. Okay, so if you go to your broker and say, "Hey, I want to buy Bitcoin," then you have taken them off the hook. They will happily sell you any kind of cryptocurrency thing that you want them to buy because you are going to them. Now, they can't come to you and say, "Hey, Gretchen, you really ought to be in crypto if you are one of these, sort of conservative investors." Now, the investment advisor, the registered investment advisor, this is a person who is, you come to them and ask for a plan, an investment strategy. I have this amount of assets. I want to get from here to there. I have these goals. How do you help me get there? What's the road path or the pathway that you can help me get there? Those individuals, you are paying them for their expertise, okay? And so therefore they have a fiduciary responsibility to the client. They must put the client's interests first as they make their plan and present it to you. So therefore they have sort of a higher standard of duty than the stockbroker, and certainly a higher standard of duty than an insurance agent. Okay. Now, at the beginning of this little exercise, I was telling you that you have to be careful in how you approach these individuals, because, as I said, a single person could be an insurance agent, could be a stockbroker, and could be a registered investment advisor. And their level of duty and their responsibility to you depends on what it is that you're talking to them about at that given moment. Okay, so even though the person may be a registered investment advisor, unless you are talking to them in that capacity as an advisor as to how you manage your assets, they have to put your interests first. But if you're just going to them and saying, "Hey, I need some insurance. Maybe I get an annuity or whatever," then that is a different relationship, and you're going to them for a different purpose, and so therefore they can try to sell you whatever insurance product they have. And we've had situations where companies use these names. I mean, all these names to the average person seem to be one and the same. A financial planner, a wealth manager, financial analyst. They all sound like they do the same kind of thing. And so you do have to ask questions of these individuals. And we've had situations where companies use this sort of ambiguity to kind of confuse people into thinking that they are doing one thing when in fact they're doing another. And you just have to be careful. You just have to ask questions, do some research, and ask at the time, okay, which hat are you wearing at this moment talking about this thing? Okay,
Wow.
and just make sure that you understand what their responsibilities are.
John, we've got another question.
Yay! I love questions.
Oh, robo scams are out of control. Both the Attorney General's office and the FCC have failed to stifle such scams and
Well,
hope elsewhere.
yeah, okay. It's a bit like whack-a-mole. I have to be honest with you. The Attorney General that we have had for the last couple have been very aggressive in going after these kinds of robocallers and spammers and stuff like that. There's a challenge. The internet is a wonderful, marvelous tool, okay, when it's used for good, okay? It makes things like this possible, that we can continue meeting in a virtual environment all across the country, all across the state, and all that. And we can get information like that. We can do business like that. We can, just do a lot of stuff. But it comes with a downside. And the downside is I can be anywhere in the world. I can spoof Gretchen's email and I can make you think that I'm right next door to you when I'm in some other country. All right. The problem that our, law enforcement agencies have is that, in the Attorney General's jurisdiction extend to Virginia, extends to Tennessee, it extends to Georgia and South Carolina. It is contained in North Carolina. And if the person is in India, we can do the best we can. Okay. How do you stop it? Well, I get them all the time. I can't tell you how many emails a day or text messages I'm getting from all kinds of different people trying to do all kinds of different things. Phone calls. There's this little gizmo, you may have heard of it. It's called an answering machine. And its only job is to answer messages, take calls. Okay? Let it do its job. If you don't recognize the number as being somebody that pops up into your address book, let it go to voicemail and let the machine answer the thing. If it's an important call, you can screen it and call that person back at your leisure. You are not a slave to this thing. I know that it's become almost like an appendage. I've got a young daughter, a teenage daughter. Taking this away from her is like, she starts going into, fits. And, but it's not our master. We still have some control over these machines. And, the Attorney General and other law enforcement agencies and us, we do what we can with the resources that we have. It is a very difficult thing. I wish that I had a magic bullet. There is no magic bullet.
John, we've got two more questions coming in, but before we take those, just real quickly, who were the most vulnerable victims to investment fraud?
Well, as you might imagine, it's the senior population, and it's not really because of any kind of capacity issues. Sometimes it is. Obviously, in some cases, people are being taken advantage of because of diminished capabilities. It's primarily because seniors have the cash. They may not be millionaires, but they have Social Security checks. They have maybe pension checks or some type of money that's coming in on a regular basis from a source where the money is good. And I get this question all the time at these events. I say, people will say, John, I'm not a rich person. I'm on a fixed income. I'm not a target, right? And I said, well, certainly, the scammers hope you're Bill Gates's grandmother, but that's not really their motivation. Their motivation is to get $1 from you. And if they can get $1 from you, that's 100% profit for them. So they'll take whatever they can get. And so, yes, seniors tend to be the most vulnerable because they have assets that are easily liquidated. They tend to have, ready reserves of cash, or some sort of cash source coming in, and that's really all the scammers are looking for, is getting the money.
And I've heard in like a lot of cases with investments that middle-aged, well-educated men are the most victimized because they think they know and they don't do all that background checking you've just talked about.
Well, we men tend to be, the stereotype, especially men of a certain age, is that they are the titans of commerce. They're the leaders. They're the bosses, in the workplace or whatever. And again, stereotypical. They tend to be the ones handling the finances for the house, and so yes, they tend to believe that they know best and that they can spot a scam, when in fact studies that ARP have conducted and other organizations have conducted show that men tend to be the more likely to be victimized. So I guess my message out there to all you women is watch your men.
Okay, well, let's get to these questions. So let's see. Is there an online
search? Yes. Let's see. The registrations tend to be handled through other entities that the Secretary of State's office sort of taps into. There are some that are just state registered. If you want to check out your stockbroker, you can go, the organization, the industry sort of self-regulates itself. FINRA is the organization. If you go to finra.org and look for broker check, or just go to Google and type in the words broker check, all one word, you can check out your broker. I always encourage people to call our office, though, and speak with one of our representatives, because of the ambiguity that can exist in the different types of registrations. Okay, our agents can kind of walk you through and say, okay, this person can do this, this person can't do that, and maybe that is what you're going to that person for. And so our agents can kind of help you sort of navigate and understand and interpret the information that's out there that's publicly disclosable. So again, I call the toll-free number 688-4507 and ask to speak with one of our registration agents.
Okay, and I think there's one more question.
Good. Is it beneficial to hire professionals to watch our investments? Well, it is certainly, there's a whole industry that's set up to do that. And that's certainly, something that you may want to certainly consider if you don't have a head for it for yourself. If you are, somebody that has a hard time understanding all this stuff, and you want to participate in the marketplace, but you don't want to take the time to kind of figure it out and do it on your own, then yeah, you might want to consider hiring a professional. Now, what type of professional? Again, that's going to be a choice that you make. I can't tell you which is the better. All I can tell you is what the different types of people do, and then you sort of make a decision as to whether or not that's the type of person you're looking for. And then you'll want to do some research. You want to find a person that may be in your neck of the woods, that you can actually go and talk to and get a feel for. We certainly want you to call our office before you sign up and give the person access to any of your money. We want you to call to find out if the person is registered. We can tell you if there has been any kind of negative action against this individual. Have any complaints been filed against that individual? If so, sort of what happened with them, were they resolved, how they resolved, things like that. Now, the presence or absence of a complaint, again, doesn't mean that the person is good or bad. Okay, it just means, in the case of an absence of a complaint, just means nobody has complained. Nobody has taken the onus on themselves to say, hey, John Maron really did something wrong to me. I don't like what he did, and I'm going to complain about it, or I'm going to let somebody know about it. Okay. Now, a complaint against me, I like to think that I'm an ethical, honest person. I try to approach my work that way, but I'm sure somewhere along the lines I have failed to live up to somebody's standards or expectations, and so somebody might decide, I'm going to complain about John Maron. But that doesn't necessarily mean that I'm a bad person. It just means I failed somebody in one instance. So again, you sort of take the complaints at face value, and you evaluate whether or not you feel comfortable with the knowledge that you have about that individual, and sort of how you feel about them.
John, you won't believe it, but we have used up our time. It's amazing because you've just covered so many things. And before we sign off, I want to just mention two things. Next week, we'll be back again with David Kirkman, and he did work for the Attorney General's office for 30 years, and we're going to be dipping our toes into the dark web. And that's real scary and real important.
Yeah, I just put a plug in for David. I've worked professionally with David for a number of years. He is very passionate about fraud prevention, and if you have the opportunity to listen to him and hear him speak, I encourage everybody to do so.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, it's going to be really interesting. And we don't want you to go there and look at it yourself because you don't want to get wrapped up in the thing, but it's important to know about. And also, as always, when we do these things, we want to have people sign up for AARP's Fraud Watch Network. You can get either 2 text messages or 2 emails a month. You don't have to be a member of AARP. And if you have any kind of potential fraud, you can call the helpline and talk with a real live person and find out more. So, John, I thank you so much. We were together, I think, a year ago in May when all of this started, and here we are again, and who knows what the future will be. I hope we have lots more interaction. So thank you so much.
Thank you. I appreciate it. And thank you to all the people who hung on and listened to me. I hope I didn't bore you too badly.
I think you gave a lot of information, which is very valuable, no matter what state you live in. Just do your research. I think that's research. That's my mantra for today. Okay. Well, thank you, everybody, for being with us, and hopefully we'll see you next week. Bye.
Bye.